Good evening, I'm Ces Oreña-Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
The biggest story tonight is the first cut from the so-called Great Cabinet revamp under the Marcos administration. The economic team stays, but it's musical chairs for some key posts in government.
And the battle for the Senate presidency is said to be between Cheese Escudero and Tito Soto now, but Senator Amy Marcos claims some colleagues want her in that race too.
And the Commission on Elections has dismissed two separate disqualification cases on a technicality, a reprieve actually for neophyte Senator Erwin Tulfo and BH party list.
Papunta na po ang Pilipinas sa impyerno. Mag-resign na kayo.
Hindi naman kami yung diktador na magsasabi, oy, wala ka na, sisipain mo na. When I said that we are all serving at the will of the President, at the President's pleasure, we have to humanize. Demanding a courtesy resignation is the best way of doing it.
Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin has been spared from the so-called Great Cabinet Purge. He was even the one who got to announce the first cuts from the revamp that include major agencies like Foreign Affairs, Environment, and Energy. Here's Maricel Halili with tonight's big story.
He communicated to me that I have his full backing for as long as I wish to work for him.
And so this was how Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin learned he is staying in Malacanang after President Marcos refused to accept his courtesy resignation. This also banishes all allegations Bersamin was one of the main targets of the cabinet purge.
Wala kaming ilusyon na panghawakan ang mga kanya-kanyang pwesto at oras na gusto ng Pangulo na palitan kami o umalis kami sa pwesto, gagawin namin yon dahil para kaming mga ordinary soldier lamang, sundalo kami.
Aside from Bersamin, the president also retained all 5 members of his economic team. Trade Secretary Cristina Roque, Finance Secretary Ralph Recto, NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan, Budget Secretary Amina Pangandaman, and Special Assistant for Investment and Economic Affairs, Frederick Go.
Because of the importance, dahil sa kahalagahan ng economic team sa buhay ng ating bansa, yan po ang unang inaksyonan ng ating Pangulo.
But there are also officials who will be transferred to other agencies. One is Energy Secretary Rafael Lutilla, who will become the new Secretary of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, replacing Antonia Yulo Loizaga. Bersamin was quick to clarify that corruption was not the reason for Loizaga's departure.
Maybe there is just a perception. I don't know how fair or unfair that perception is, na mas malimit siya sa labas ng bansa. Yun ang recurring na pinapadating sa amin. Ngunit huwag na natin siyang husgahan. No? Whether inefficiency yan o hindi, that's not up for us to do. But the evaluation showed that it was time to have her rest muna.
So nag-underperform na po?
Undersecretary Sharon Garin will be the officer in charge of the DOE, while the executive is working on a replacement for Lutilla. One who definitely under-delivered, according to Bersamin, was Secretary Jose Acuzar of the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development. Recall that Acuzar promised 1 million housing units for every year of Marcos's term to address the country's 6 million housing backlog. Still, Acuzar is not getting the axe and will be taking on a new role as presidential advisor for Pasig River Development and Improvement.
He is a very efficient he was very efficient in the private sector, and we expect that the president expected na makapag-deliver siya. Pero I don't know if he set the standard too high for himself dahil 1 million housing a year. Housing units, there may have been obstacles in his way.
Engineer Jose Aliling has been tapped to replace Acuzar at the DSUD. He had served as undersecretary in the agency and as CEO of a construction firm. Meanwhile, Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo will be back in his former post as permanent representative of the United Nations effective August 1. He shall replace Antonio Manuel Lagdameo, who was set to retire on July 31. Manalo will be replaced by Undersecretary Tess Lazaro as DFA chief.
Ang kahalagahan ng assignment sa United Nations, unawain natin, ay nandyan dahil tayo ay nangangampanya na magiging non-permanent member ng UN Security Council sa 27 to 28.
In all, 52 officials have submitted their courtesy resignation to the president. Malacanang assures all will undergo performance evaluation.
Now, next week, maybe after Wednesday, there will be more. Yung mga ibang aksyon sa courtesy resignation ng ibang cabinet secretaries, in the coming days, magkakaroon ng more careful evaluation. Ang urgent kasi itong economic team. We will make the announcements as the decisions are made.
There are, of course, critics of the Marcos administration's reset. Former Executive Secretary Vic Rodriguez, now an ally of the Dutertes, slammed the move as mere optics, saying his ex-boss, in fact, should be the one to go. Another staunch Duterte supporter agrees.
Papunta na po ang Pilipinas sa impyerno. Maawa naman po kayo, mag-resign na kayo. Hayaan mong mamuno si Inday Sara Duterte.
To Rodriguez's and Roque's critic, here's what E.S. Bersamin had to say.
Si Vic Rodriguez, daldal ng daldal yan eh. Do you listen to him? Huh? Why was he taken out of the office? Wala pa siyang 3 buwan. Gusto niya makipag-away, wag na. Kaya mo, kantsaw lang siya eh. Kantsaw ng kantsaw. That's when you see, in the middle of night, a dog barking at the fence. If you want to get up, you get up and throw stones at that dog. But we will not do that to him.
There are more positive reactions to the great cabinet revamp. House Speaker Martin Romualdez says this is a strong and necessary step, a proof that the president listens, acknowledges, and acts with resolve. For his part, Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong said that while he welcomes the president's call for courtesy resignations, he also hopes measures will be employed to strengthen the fight against corruption. Among them, the abolition of pork barrel in the executive, transparency in biddings, no Congress interference in departmental appointments, eliminate kickbacks in public projects, and the removal of congressional control over programs like AKAP, AIX, and TESDA scholarships. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
Business groups have also weighed in on President Bongbong Marcos's move to cleanse his cabinet, just hours before it was announced that the economic team is staying. The Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry admits to being surprised as they find the government performing relatively well in managing the economy. They did find unfortunate that economic growth has been undermined by developments on the political front. The PCCI hopes that the courtesy resignations bring in accountable and merit-based appointments as they try to get more investments for the Philippines. On the other hand, the Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chambers of Commerce and Industry, or FFCCCI, lauded the president's action. The group called it a demonstration of, quote, his strong leadership and clear vision for a more responsive and effective government, responsible and accountable to the Filipino people. The FFCCCII hopes that this move by the president is heeded by all members of the cabinet and he is able to reorganize his cabinet as he sees fit. The group likewise thanked the secretaries who have tendered their courtesy resignations, acknowledging it as a sacrifice.
Well, not everyone's pleased about the shakeup in the Marcos cabinet, particularly those in the education sector. Stakeholders are concerned that current programs and initiatives recently rolled out by Education Secretary Sonny Angara will be for naught. The Teachers' Dignity Coalition expressed confidence in Angara's tenure as DepEd Secretary, who replaced Vice President Sara Duterte. TDC says Angara has managed to address many of DepEd's areas of concern, such as work hours of teachers and the much-sought amendments to the senior high school curriculum. Revisions to the curriculum have recently been announced for implementation in the 2025 to 2026 school year. TDC added that while the reasons for the revamp are clear, the President should consider the qualifications of the next cabinet secretaries. For its part, the Philippine Business for Education is calling on the President to reappoint Angara as well as TESDA Director General Kiko Benitez.
Papasokan na po tayo, di ba? Tapos ganito yung mangyayari, no? So hindi namin alam ngayon sa DepEd, no? Kanino kukuha ng instruction. It's Secretary Angara, di ba? On top of this, programs di ba? Tapos bigla siyang aalisin. Baka hindi naman po makabuti, no, sa Department of Education as an institution.
Kami nakita namin na unprecedented yung level of coordination, unprecedented yung level of collaboration between the two agencies, particularly because pareho silang seryoso in terms of making sure na konektado ang basic education at ang higher education, particularly sa skills training.
It's a weekend and so much has happened since Monday, and right on top of the week's headlines is President Marcos and his push to reset the cabinet. Who's in? Who's out? Let's see if our guest tonight can give us more clues. Welcome back to the Big Story. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro, good evening sa inyo. Well, I'm sure it's gonna be a busy weekend dahil hindi pa tapos ang cabinet. Great cabinet revamp is what we're calling it.
Yes, good evening, beautiful ladies. Well, I think so. It will be so busy days for the coming week.
Many are sort of underwhelmed by the so-called shake-up. Who else are going to be affected? Can you clue us in?
Well, according to Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin, there will be more announcements. Maybe this coming Wednesday. Let's just wait and see. And I believe there are more.
In the case of Natural Resources Secretary Loizaga, ano ba talaga ang rason? May sakit po siya? It was for health reasons, ang announcement.
We heard ES Bersamin. It seems that there is this underperformance and maybe she should need some rest. And there may be a possibility of appointing her to another position where she excels. So let's just, again, wait and see.
Saan po yung underperformance doon? In her case?
Kanina kinuwento po ni ES na there are issues, na lagi po siya nagbabiyahe. So maybe isa po ito sa nasa-record at na-evaluate sa kanya. So that's the only impression that ES Bersamin gave to us a while ago.
So parang graceful exit na lang ang binigay nyo sa kanya. Health reasons.
Yes. And siguro alam din po niya kung saan po ba siya nagkulang or may pagkukulang po siya. But sabi nga po ni ES, this is the humanized manner of removing a person from the position.
Attorney Claire, not to diminish the accomplishments and capabilities of Energy or former Energy Secretary Popo Lotilla, pero bakit po siya yung nilipat sa DENR? What is the rationale behind that shift?
As of now, Shawn, I have no idea. I do not have any details why Secretary Lotilla was chosen as DNR Secretary. So maybe he has this skills also and expertise with regard to natural resources. It was not mentioned by ES. Maybe they found something from him that will make him better as a Secretary of DNR rather than the OE.
You know, the announcement said that the economic team stays, but ang DA, hindi ba yun part ng economic team, ang agriculture po?
Hindi po yata kasi parang sa economic team 5 lang po yung nabanggit. Hindi po pasok po yung DA.
Pero mahalaga rin yun sa ekonomiya. Ano po ang mariretain po ba si Secretary Kiko?
As of now, wala po tayong anumang information. Pero sabi nga po natin, everybody should still work. There will be no interruption in their doing their task. So wala po kami pang nakikita na anumang senyales na matatanggal si Secretary Kiko.
Pero, sorry pa. Yun nga kasi yung point na hindi pa natin alam kung kailan papalitan, kung kailan matatapos yung revamp, na wala siyang deadline. It's putting a lot of people in this spot where di nila sure magtatrabaho po ba yung mga tao, if they think their secretary could be out the door. Ano po yung...
Yes, the mandate of the President is very clear. The government, the work of the government should not be interrupted during the transition. So everybody should work. So, di ba po, this is the right time, the best time for all the cabinet secretaries to do their jobs, to show that they are efficient, they are result oriented. So, mas maganda po ito ipakita nila na hindi po ako dapat matanggal because I'm doing my best. So,
parang hindi humanizing po yon. Buong weekend sila hindi makakatulog kung matatanggal ba sila o hindi.
Pero mas ano po to mas magiging competitive sila sa sarili nila mismo at mapapakita nila na wait po, taong bayan, I'm good in my job. So you should still trust me. So I think that's the way it is.
Well, Attorney Claire, curious kami, no? Who makes up the performance review team? Is it just President Marcos? At ano po yung criteria po ba doon sa pag-review sa kanilang performance? Because the President did say na the elections reflects the sentiment of the people and they're disappointed with the services dahil mabagal daw. Yun lang po ba yung batayan ng pag-perform sa kanilang performance?
Well, there is this committee. There is a review committee, but according again to ES Lucas Bersamin, they cannot divulge the members or who is the composition of the committee. But definitely, we can be assured that they are all objective, and the president will review the evaluation that this committee will make. So. What's the other question again?
Yung criteria po, Attorney.
Criteria. Okay. Of course, first of all, it's the performance. And if there is some other issues about, let's say, corruption or any anomaly, it will also be put into issue.
Attorney, kailan po nabuo na lang yung team? Because kailan po nabuo itong performance review team? Sige, kahit wag na natin pag-usapan yung identity nila. Pero kasi before pa nung midterm elections, marami na pong chismis. And in fact, marami na rin, hindi naman marami, pero may ilan-ilan nang pinalitan ng mga cabsecs even before the midterm polls. So, alam natin na meron na dati, di ba? So, is it that same team? And kailan pa siya na-decide na, sige, magbuo tayo ng performance review team?
Hindi ko po natanong. Sorry. Hindi ko alam.
Now, let's shift to the podcast of the President. Podcast number 1. Kailan pa yung next? Kasi, well, many who have seen it are saying that he showed, that he was empathizing with the people. But, parang walang spontaneity daw. Sana po hindi masyadong curated. Kailan ba kami makakaasa na may susundan ba po itong podcast number 1?
Yes, yes, there will be more podcasts to come. So that he will be the one speaking to the people, all his feelings, all his frustrations, all his happiness on his performance and programs. So we'll just wait for that. I believe there will be more podcasts to come.
What about a press con? Really facing the media? Hindi naman puro kayo. Hindi naman sinasabi namin sawa na kami sa inyo. Pero it would be great for the President to go before the media.
And if I may add, no, before you answer, Attorney, yun din po yung promise ni Presidente sa atin earlier this year. Sabi niya, I will be facing the media more. It happened exactly one more time, right after nung ICC arrest ni former President Duterte. And then we did not have Q&A anymore with the President openly.
So as of now, what I have learned that there will be podcasts, but with regard to the press briefing, we will just check. I have not been informed of any press briefing to be scheduled. But anyway, if there will be one press briefing that will be scheduled, I will be the one to tell you, to reveal it to you.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have to settle with the podcasts for now, Attorney Claire, no? But speaking of the podcast, sinabi po doon ni President Marcos that he's open to reconciling with his enemies. Kasama na po doon, syempre, mga Duterte. But you have the side of the Dutertes, such as Attorney Sal Panelo, saying na for the President to prove his sincerity, ay ibalik daw po niya ang dating presidente dito sa Pilipinas. What does the palace have to say to that?
Well, anyway, the president is very clear. When he said that he would be open for reconciliation, anyway, the name of Duterte was mentioned, so definitely he will say yes. And to all the people that may be have opposing objectives, opposing goals or policies, everybody he wants to be in collaboration. Wait, what I mean is, he is ready to be at peace with them, to be in unity with them, so that he can perform. He can set the goals for the country, and there will be no more obstruction. So that his goals and the promises would be given to the people. But to have this kind of condition for just a reconciliation, we believe that the president will always be upholding the Constitution, comply with the laws, and that's it. There would be no condition with regard to the reconciliation. He would not just be settled. He will not settle with the personal interest or request of a certain personality or certain group of people.
Ma'am, kayo rin sa communications office are also submitted your courtesy resignations?
I personally,
Yes,
I am
ma'am.
not a secretary. No,
hindi.
I'm not.
Si
I'm not,
J.
student.
Ruiz po.
Yes, he submitted his courtesy resignation.
Well, I'm asking because there have been many critics of how your messaging was hijacked by the Duterte camp. You had a completely valid reason for the arrest. Let's just say you're as well as the impeachment move, and yet it backfired on you because your messaging was not as effective. How would you answer those criticisms?
Well, maybe it depends upon who, diba? It depends upon who sees the narrative. Those people who believe that the president just merely performed based on the law, based on the commitment of the country to the Interpol, they will say that the president and the government just did well.
But the election showed nga na hindi eh. The
It
result
depends.
of the
Again,
midterm elections.
I don't think that is the main reason if all the Alianza members were not voted upon. Maybe it is just part, but it is not really based on the messaging. At we will just do our best if that is the problem, and one of the problems. I mean, we will just do our best because we do not. We are not inclined to make fake news. Lots of people are now into fake news, and there is this.
Di naman po ibig sabihin magfa-fake news kayo, but then having your message reach, a wider audience, making them understand why you did what you did, why the government did what it did.
Maybe a better strategy will be adopted by the PCO, better messaging style. But it is so for me, it's kind of hard if some other countries interested to our politics is also into interfering with our own politics. So I guess
You're referring to China.
I do not say that. I do not say that. But it's so
Which
hard.
country then?
Hard. It is so hard. If it's based on the findings in the Senate, it's so hard. But we will try our best to give the message across, to send the message across to the people of how good the president in his job, how good the president in his performance. So maybe we will just try another.
In closing, what would you consider his most important contribution in the first 3 years of office?
As of now, we can say that there's a decline in the inflation rate, and most people do not
Pero tumaas po ang poverty, tumaas ang hunger.
But we still have this walang gutom program that we believe that it reached a lot of people, and there's still some ayuda with regard to the feeding
Siguro
program.
ang DSWD is on the line.
Yes, DSWD. And I believe that all the reports of the DSWD, they are all making good in their it is making good in its performance because of this walang gutom program and the feeding program. So maybe it is just not being highlighted. I'm so sorry for that. But there are lots of programs that really for the people, especially those below poverty line. But maybe it's not just being highlighted.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, we thank you so much for talking to us, Palace Press Officer Attorney Claire Castro. Have a good weekend, ma'am.
Thank you, ladies.
Right, we're just going to take a quick break, but coming up on the big story, Senator Amy Marcos reveals getting a push from colleagues to make a go at the Senate presidency for the 20th Congress. But is the presidential sister open to that idea? Find out when the big story returns. Stay tuned.
The big story is back with persistent aggression in the West Philippine Sea. Recently, a China Coast Guard vessel blasted water cannons and sideswiped a Philippine research vessel in waters off Pag-asa Island. This is the first reported attack of its kind against a fisheries ship in the area. This also marks the first use of water cannons by China against a Philippine ship operating near Sandy Cay 2.
The BFAR, Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, has condemned the CCG's quote-unquote aggressive interference on their vessels. The ships were on a routine marine scientific research mission near Pag-asa Cay 2 in the West Philippine Sea. Beijing's boat fired water cannons and sideswipes the BRP Datu Sanday twice, damaging its port bow and smokestack. The incident also placed the vessel's civilian scientists at risk.
We believe that it does not have any strategic gain on our part kung gagayahin natin sila. We just have to maintain our moral high ground, that we are law abider.
In response, China released videos and photos portraying the Philippines as an intruder, claiming their Coast Guard only acted to expel an obtrusive vessel from Chinese waters. CCG spokesperson Liu Tichen urged the Philippines to halt what they called violations, reasserting its right to protect its maritime claims. For its part, Akbayan Party List zeroed in on the ongoing standoff between Philippine and Chinese ships in the WPS. The group is pushing for the creation of a West Philippine Sea bloc in the upcoming 20th Congress to champion policies that safeguard the country's exclusive economic zone. They also want WPS lessons added to the basic education curriculum to combat online disinformation.
Ito yung mga kababayan natin at kasama natin sa Kongreso na naniniwala na dapat tayo ay nariyan, tayo ay nag-harness ng ating resources dyan at dapat naninindigan tayo laban doon sa encroachment ng China.
To make sense of the escalating tension in the West Philippine Sea, we're joined live by Ray Powell, Director of Sea Light Gordian Knot Center for National Security Innovation at Stanford University. Good evening. Welcome to the Big Story.
It's great to be back. I like your new set.
Thank you. Well, Ray, the condemnable incident comes as you write in your recent article about how China has been really blocking access to Scarborough Shoal.
Yeah, we've really seen a lot of the action since last year move sort of north and west to Scarborough Shoal and also to Pagasa. So the things seem to have settled down around Ayungin Shoal and Escoda Shoal, but now we see all of the action happening up there.
And how have these incidents escalated over the year?
Well, so specifically with Bao de Masinloc, we saw what we've seen, and we put in the article, a pattern of pushing out. So a lot more Chinese ships surrounding the shoal and pushing back any Philippine Coast Guard or BFAR ships away from the shoal. And I think that's very clearly demonstrated in some of the data visualization that we put out. And it's been acknowledged by the Philippine government. With Sandy Cay in particular, this seems to be an attempt by China to sort of, if you look at what Pagasa is a really unique place in the Spratly Archipelago. It's the only civilian population. And China has nearby, it has Subi Reef. It's got this huge military base that has no real legal status. It's a low tide elevation built up into a military base. And so if China were to be able to secure Sandy Cay, then it can say, well, this has a clear legal status because it's above high tide, or it's above water at high tide, which gives it would give it its own territorial sea. So there's this little legal maneuvering being played by China with regard to Sandy Cay as well.
Okay, so Sandy Cay has come to our attention in recent years. We never used to talk about that specific area. But this was also not the first aggressive incident. They did the chopper thing when the UP marine biologists were there and the sand was flying. This is around the time they found those piles of shells, right? Which they couldn't determine, whether they were just swept by the tide or someone dumped them there.
Right.
Is that the reason why, or is it more that they want to take it over? Or do you think personally that those shells are to be used for some sort of island building?
Well, so right now China has avoided inhabiting any previously uninhabited features. That's the one part of the 2002 Declaration of the Conduct of the Parties in the South China Sea that China has really stood by. Yeah, right. They've sort of blown everything else up, but that particular thing, they've been very careful. So I'm not sure we're going to see China build anything there, at least not now. I think it's possible.
But they're setting the stage.
And it's possible that they are trying to basically reaffirm the fact that it is above water at high tide, which gives it, as I said, that more a legal status of the equivalent to Pagasa, so that they would essentially create a competitor for that territorial sea.
But it's so different. Pagasa's an island. It has,
So the way international law works is it really depends on whether you're above or below water at high tide. And the arbitral award found that there is nothing that qualifies as a full-blown island, in quotes, in the Spratly Archipelago, because nothing can sustain life on its own. So in other words, even Pagasa needs support from the outside to sustain life. So that was what the arbitral award found. So in order to get the most you can get besides being an island, you have to be considered a rock. And under international law, Pagasa is a rock, and Sandy Cay, if it's above water at high tide, would also be considered a rock and generate a 12 nautical mile territorial sea. Subi Reef is considered a low tide elevation and gets no territorial sea under international law. So right now in that area, China does not occupy anything that gets a territorial sea.
Well, Ray, next week, President Marcos is heading to Malaysia for the ASEAN summit, and there he vows to advocate for a binding code of conduct in the South China Sea. But you did mention earlier you're a pessimist when it comes to a code of conduct.
I am.
Is it really all for naught?
Well, I mean, so we have this saying in the United States. You ever see the movie Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray wakes up and it's the same day every day? I feel like that with the code of conduct. You know, every year we get a new ASEAN chair, and every one of them is going to solve the code of conduct. I've said for years now that the basic problem with the code of conduct is the interests are just too divergent. What would be the difference in having a binding code of conduct? Somebody has to bind it. And who would this somebody be, right? Would China agree that this... Would China agree that the somebody would be anybody that's not China, right? The answer is no, right? So China's claims have never changed. They claim everything within the 9-dash line. In fact, they call it indisputable sovereignty. And so the issue really is we're never going to see China agree to any binding in which China is not the binder.
Okay, but doesn't mean we can't try. I mean,
I think we just have to keep our expectations in check. So I think when President Marcos talks about that, so I'm Ray Powell's opinion, I think he genuinely would like to see that happen. I think probably deep in his bones, he knows it's not going to happen, but that's what you have to say to generate good faith amongst your ASEAN colleagues and say, I'm committed to this process. But I think that if everyone was given truth serum, they would say, it's not going to happen.
So what best to do in this situation? It's frustrating.
Yep.
We are the weaker sovereign nation.
Yep. So I have categorized this sort of, I've tried to frame this as an occupation that the Philippines is under. It's a maritime occupation, right? So China has taken up positions in the West Philippine Sea that it essentially occupies. For example, that zone around Scarborough Shoal is
now practically controlled by them.
Right.
Yeah.
So how does a smaller power, how does a resistance defeat an occupation? You outlast it. So, I mean, if you look at any resistance movement in history, it is a long-term proposition. So what does the Philippines do in the meantime? It builds national resilience, it builds international support, and it plans for the long term. So it is frustrating because it means that the Philippines is probably not going to be able to enjoy the great victories, like China's not going to suddenly up and leave Scarborough Shoal. So you have to think long term. Where do we want to be in 20, 25, 30 years? And how do we outlast this occupying force?
Right, because China plans ahead.
Yes.
And the Philippines sometimes doesn't do that.
You know, democracies are not really good at that. I come from a very large democracy. We are not great at it either. We tend to think in electoral cycles.
Exactly. So, well, we thank you so much. We haven't even touched the giant clams.
And the Scarborough Shoal.
Yeah.
Well, so, next time we're going to have to talk giant clams because that's a really interesting topic.
It's super interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Ray Powell, Director of Sea Light Gordianot Center for National Security Innovation at Stanford University.
We're going to be pausing for another quick break, but right after that, new Senator Erwin Tulfo and still unproclaimed BH party list are rid of their respective disqualification cases. Why the COMELEC dismissed the petitions when the big story returns? Keep it here.
Thank you for staying with us here on The Big Story. Could Amy Marcos be the next Senate President? The presidential sister confirmed that some of her fellow senators have approached her with a proposal. To this she said, and I quote, "Whoever will be elected by our peers, whether it is me or not, there are certain congressional reforms that need to be undertaken." Marcos is also pushing for changes in the process of scrutinizing the national budget. Senator Amy wants what she called was the mysterious BICAM out of the way and urged focus on spending, food security, support to farmers and fishermen, education, health, and social services. Marcos also took a swipe at political parties becoming mere tools for personal ambition rather than public interest. But Amy is not the only one in the running for Senate President. Recall that Duterte ally Senators Bongo and Bato de la Rosa confirmed returning Senator Tito Soto and current SP Cheese Escudero have both asked for their support. Senate President pro tempore Jinggoy Estrada said he is not part of any talks but believes Escudero will stay in his post.
Well, everything's still possible and everything's still fluid. We still have 1 month to talk about things, to negotiate. But I'm confident that siguro Senate President Escudero will still retain his position.
Meantime, Senator Erwin Tulfo has yet to make a decision on who to support as Senate President.
Pareho, nagpahiwatig na po si Senator Soto at si Senator Cheese Escudero. Pareho po sila na humingi ng meeting. Sabi ko sa kanila pareho na mag-usap po na kami magkapatid. Kung siguro saan si Tol Rapi, doon na lang ako.
Speaking of Senator-elect Erwin Tulfo, the petition to disqualify him from the 2025 midterm elections has been dismissed by the COMELEC. The petition against Tulfo were on the grounds of his previous libel conviction and supposed U.S. citizenship. In its decision, the COMELEC said this cannot be used anymore since Tulfo's disqualification had been removed after the expiration of 5 years from service of sentence rule. As for the citizenship issue, the COMELEC division said the petitioners against Tulfo should have instead raised this in a petition to cancel his COC or certificate of candidacy. Tulfo thanked the COMELEC for its fairness in its decision.
Salamat po. Una sa lahat, pasalamat po sa Panginoon Diyos. Pangalawa, doon sa COMELEC Bank, talagang pinag-aralan nila yung kaso. Wala naman talagang basis. Kasi may kompleto naman yung mga dokumento namin.
Also getting a favorable result in their disqualification case is BH Party List or Bagong Henerasyon. Earlier this week, the COMELEC suspended the proclamation of BH due to its pending case. In its decision, the poll body said the petitioners against the party list failed to comply with the mandatory requirements in filing petitions. The suspension of Bagong Henerasyon's proclamation is now lifted.
Nakita po nila, hindi pala naman nagka-preference nung mismong ang ginawa ay sinabi mayroong registered mail. Dapat po kasi personal service yun mismo sa respondent. So yun pa lang po ay nakita ng ground. Hindi na po pumunta sa merits para i-dismiss kaagad ang kaso.
And before we go, Signal TV just took streaming to the next level with the launch of Signal Super, a first-of-its-kind app that lets one access multiple streaming services in one place. Now, from Signal Play to Max, View, Hallmark Plus, and more, it's now all under one login, one search, and one subscription. And to tell us what's in store for viewers, here's mobile journalist and one of the Big Story's very own producers, Isa Abelio. Hi, Isa. Walk us through what the Signal Super app is. Very exciting. How does it work?
Hi, yeah. So, like you mentioned earlier, it is the first and only mobile app aggregator here in the Philippines. So that is Signal Super. This was developed by Signal together with Tata Play. And the promise is that it allows you to access multiple streaming platforms in only one app. Earlier, Signal's Chief Revenue Officer, Jared Milan, said one of the reasons that Signal Play was created was to take complexity out of content. So no more app hopping, because in Signal Super, there are actually 8 different platforms that are available. Like you said earlier, we have Signal Play, Pilipinas Live. We also have Max, which holds HBO originals like White Lotus, House of the Dragon, and the like. We also have View for your K-dramas. We also have apps that aren't in the Philippines yet, like Hallmark Plus, which you have rom-coms and Christmas movies, feel-good Christmas movies. You also have Lionsgate Play, which has Twilight, Hunger Games, John Wick. You also have Fuse Plus, which is celebrity documentaries. And then you also have Curiosity Stream, which has documentaries on environment, on animal life, and even like topics like economics and stuff like that. So the promise is that, like you mentioned earlier, it's one login, one search, one subscription, because with Signal Super, all you need is one. That is the promise of Signal Super.
All right, Isa, well, I believe you have the app on your iPad. Maybe you can show us how it works
Is
in
it
action.
easy? Is it easy to use?
Yes.
For the titas in the
Yes, so
house?
So I had the privilege of having access to Signal Super. So over here, when you open it, that's it. So you see all of the different platforms that are available here. You can actually even see Signal Play, Pilipinas Live, which are the Signal's local platforms. And then you can also see like recommended and stuff like that. So if you want to watch something, so earlier I was watching actually climate impact in Asia, you know, sustainability stuff. So when you press it,
We have a question, Isa.
yes.
Can the fans of the Big Story catch our show there?
Yes, you can actually. So
on
you press
demand
Signal Play.
Or it has to be live?
Signal Play, and right here you have One News. You press it, and it should appear. That's us right now.
Oh my gosh!
Okay, so it's a live. It's a live streaming service.
You can watch
Biglang natuwa.
our show
Yeah.
over in Signal Super. So shameless plug rin yan. So it's super easy. As in, like, the beauty of Signal Super is that the reason why it took 2 years to develop was because they wanted it to be easy so that when you click on whatever content you want from whatever platform, you won't go out of the app anymore. It's just all inside.
Yeah.
So that's why it's convenient and super value for money talaga.
Okay, so Isa,
So magkano yung subscription? Now that you
Okay.
showed me, and I think I
Gusto mo na.
Oh, gusto ko na.
Gusto mo na.
Okay, so right now there are two plans. So you have Premium Plus and Premium. So Premium Plus has all 8 apps, and that is at $7.99 per month. So sobrang sulit na compared to paying for multiple apps, right? And then for Premium, you have 6 apps, so there's no Max and Hallmark Plus. That is $4.99 per month. Pero may
Pero?
intro promo sila ngayon. Yes.
Gusto natin
So,
yan.
till June 30, it's 50 off. So, for Premium Plus, it's $3.99 na lang. And then for Premium, it's $2.49 na lang. So, sobrang sulit na. You get all of those apps for super cheap price.
And Isa, I understand there are talks of other platforms coming in pa. Correct?
Yes, actually, they didn't disclose exactly what other platforms they're talking to. But so I think we should just wait and see kung ano ina-announce ng Signal Super kasi exciting din yung mga coming up.
Okay, so something to look forward for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. That was mobile journalist Isa Abelio.
All right, TGIF, it is Friday today. So that's it for the show this week.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thank you for watching The Big Story. Have a good night and a great weekend, everyone.